Hi, everyone, and welcome to AB Conversations, where we will help you CFP your way out of it. A podcast where you get into the minds of a couple certified financial planners on how we think and feel about everyday financial planning questions and what should really matter most to you. A healthier financial life starts now. So I thought inaugural podcast, we'd start with what I feel is like the most obvious and most frequent question we get. Not always in the office, right? Sometimes, right, when we meet someone for the first time, clearly this would be the question. But I'm talking more, we're out in the community, we're with friends and family, you're out at the racetrack. I'm sure you get this question a lot too, right? And that's that, what do you really do, right? Said differently, what is financial planning anyway? I think we got a lot of jargon in this industry. Mm-hmm. You know, you and I could certainly talk about things that we would say it definitely isn't. Yeah. But let me pose that question to you to start. What is financial planning anyway?
Yeah. So, you know, it's not always that easy to kind of put in a box because it does mean different things to different people. Sure. Oftentimes, at least from our standpoint, right, it's depending on the life event or the stage of life that someone is at. You know, the planning process, the step-by-step process may be easily replicated, right? The process doesn't necessarily change, but the topics or the strategies or the areas of focus certainly change depending on, you know, the life stage that somebody is at.
Yeah. So then let's break that part down, right? So when I kind of think of financial planning in four different ways, and you're hitting on probably the first one. You know, we talk about it as a very comprehensive process. So people may call themselves financial planners, but maybe that's just something that leads to asset allocation or something that leads to an insurance product or something like that, right? When we talk about financial planning, you said process, we call it like a very comprehensive thing. We call it checking a bunch of boxes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are those boxes? How would you articulate what somebody's actually going to get out of, what questions are going to be answered out of a financial planning process?
Ooh, yeah. So, yeah, there's certainly, as kind of that standard process, again, put aside different stage of life, different life event, whatever they're going through, you know, loss of a spouse, retirement, any of those things. There's always going to be kind of what we call the fundamentals, right? And it's just an analysis on cash flow. Do they have the right amount of cash reserve? Are they saving in the right vehicles? You know, do they have the right amounts and right types of insurance that they need? Do they have an estate plan in place? And even that's just as basic as, you know, will, power of attorney, living will, just the basic building blocks before you can kind of even get into the specific, we call them the fires that need to be put out, whether that is someone's retiring in a couple of years and they want to make sure that they have, you know, the assets to do that.
Yeah. So I think that's cool because you hit on the second thing that I would have wanted to hit on, right? We talk about, here's what you're going to get out of it, this comprehensive process, accountability. We're going to be your partners. We're going to make sure that there aren't any potholes that you didn't know about, you know, nothing bad coming around the corner. I think people find us, right? What we would deem financial planning is the questions that are specific to a life event or something big that comes their way, right? So you hit on that, whether it's the big things, you know, loss of a job, right? How many people are going through that right now? A career change, a promotion. It may be a relationship that has changed, whether it's because something didn't work out, God forbid, the loss of a spouse, family events, you know, all the way down to, I think, the most common one, right? People find us around retirement when they go, oh crap, I got all these questions to answer, you know, and the big daunting things of, am I going to have enough? How am I going to cover healthcare? How am I recreating paychecks? So I think you hit on the second one. It's a comprehensive process, checking a lot of boxes. The same thing for everyone in that point, but life transitions and life events would have been the second one. But I also want to hit on, I would think, as we would want to articulate it, financial planning is a relationship, right? It's oh, well, I got a guy. He takes care of that, right? So maybe give me your perspective on that. When we say, hey, what do we do, right? We work intimately with families on financial planning. what does the relationship actually look like?
That's a good question. Yeah, so I think part of that process, going back to the process itself, it involves a lot of conversation in trying to get to the heart of what someone's values actually are. Going through the financial side of things, again, it's all the basics from a financial standpoint, but that doesn't necessarily tell the whole story when now we're trying to put that together with how do they actually think and feel and act with their money, to get to that ultimate goal, whatever that goal may be, and just trying to make those things actually fit together, right? If you can tell pretty quickly by what someone has accumulated or what they're actually doing, beyond just what they say kind of their goal is, right?
Right. And I think that's a really key point, because once we kind of put all of that together and we kind of understand what they value, how they think, what matters to them, that is a great precursor and a great foundation for when they actually do go through some sort of life transition, because then you've got that backbone of not only feeling like, hey, I've got this team supporting me to help me answer these questions when the variables change, but I've already got that plan in place that doesn't feel like I'm having to start all over, right? Think of how stressful the situation must have been for people that have a huge life event, like a once in a lifetime pandemic, right? Yeah. Now having to like completely change something. Yeah, we hope. Versus somebody that had a plan in place, kind of had that lifeboat that we want a financial plan to be, that kind of says, hey, we knew storms are going to come. We didn't know when or how. Certainly nobody may have predicted this being the reason or the occurrence, but you've got that foundation that keeps things on an even keel. May mean that we have to steer the ship a little bit, but it's not building a ship in the middle of a storm, right? So I like to think of financial planning on the fluffier side, right, as the relationship, being able to say, I got a guy.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, so the fourth thing that I had on my mind, and would want you to weigh in on this, the misconceptions. Sometimes it's maybe easier to articulate financial planning as what it isn't. And we've been doing this long enough together. We've seen those misconceptions. Maybe throw some of them out there.
Oh man. So that's like, you go to, I don't want to throw these people under the bus, but it's, an insurance agent who clearly looks at one specific focus. Again, we look at comprehensive planning. We're trying to see your whole financial picture and put all those puzzle pieces together. So yeah, what it isn't is, a product sale. There's no end goal. There's no happy meal here at the end of the process that says you get to choose between solutions A, B, and C. It's way more open-ended. And again, it's all customized to the actual strategies that would work.
Yeah. And what would you, I like that one. I'd also say it's the same kind of idea of what it isn't. It's not a cookie cutter portfolio. I know there's many different ways to invest, and certainly we see that. We are independent financial advisors, so we get to think about it from different ways. But it is certainly not, hey, here are two financial planners, two CFPs. I want to invest some money, so I'll go to them. For us, financial planning is whoa. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to do that effectively for you before we go through this process that in some way dictates to me how you should be invested. It's not just how you think and feel about investments. It's what are we working towards so that we're picking the right vehicles, we're picking the right instruments, we're managing that the important way. So I think, we certainly manage money, right? But that is after a comprehensive financial planning process that dictates that to us.
Yeah, absolutely. We've certainly been around long enough to know that when you start a relationship off purely looking at investments, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's hard for us to always answer the question, of where they should be allocated. And again, it comes back to goals and their values, right? If there is a specific goal in mind, that's not always the end all be all in terms of then how should you be invested. It really is that entire picture that needs to come together, and investments are certainly a part of that.
Yeah. And I think, so I'd kind of button that up by also talking about, from that investment standpoint, once that plan is put in place, I don't want the misconception out there either to be that, there isn't a very proactive level of communication that needs to come with that. To think about what we just went through, a horrible market downturn in March, to see that turn around pretty quickly. But the whole point of the financial plan is, maybe we'll do a podcast on this next time, is to provide that kind of lifeboat that says we have a plan that has dictated how we should be invested in good times and in bad, and then have a proactive process for making sure you're on top of that when things need to be tweaked. But we're certainly, and I would not say any financial planner that truly does financial planning, are acting like brokers, buying and selling every day. That's not financial planning.
Yeah, and maybe we touched on this a little bit earlier, but in your words, right? We often like to think, what's in it for them? What does someone get out of this process? Back to your point of, what is this process not? What is financial planning not? What does somebody get out of the process by actually going through our planning process, with us?
Well, that's where, you would say it depends. How do people digest things?
My favorite answer.
Part of being, what I would call a boutique practice that has, I would call very in-depth relationships with clients, is that to some people, that's a one-page sheet of, here are the next steps of what we got to do, who's going to do it, and by when. For other people, that's a 15-page document that says, here's all the things you're trying to accomplish. Here's what we saw that's not going well. Here's what we need to change and why. Here's how we're going to go about you get my point, yada, yada, yada. And then here are the 13 reports that are going to go with it to support why we're thinking this way. So I think what people get out of it, either way, is another set of eyes. It's an accountability partner. In many ways, we're a CFO for busy people, right? So they don't have to be on top of everything all the time. We like to call it head coach, right? Somebody that's going to bring together their other professionals. But all the while, it's financial planning as an accountability partner to help you get to where you want to get to.
Yeah, we know ultimately that the best advice, the most perfect strategy that you can, write somebody or tell them, here's what you need to do. It's worthless if it doesn't actually get implemented and put into practice.
I like it. All right.
Okay. Do we need to let people in on the AB conversations so you can CFP your way out of it?
There we go. There you go.
Hey everyone, Adam and I really appreciate you tuning in. Please note that the opinions we voiced in the show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be most appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, your accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to making any decisions or investing. Thanks for listening.